On today's World Insight, shopping with a vengeance at the Double 11 Festival. The online retail boom, great tidings for economic recovery.
It seems that there has been quite a pent-up demand for Double 11, and people's enthusiasm are still on the high side.
And famous for telling customers because you're worth it. French personal care company L'Oréal made its presence worth it at the recent China Import Expo. How beauty products survive lockdowns and growth prospects from the L'Oréal chairman.
China is the example, maybe the only example of a country where we are doing really, really well.
Here's our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei in Beijing. We begin with China's biggest annual shopping spree, Double 11, also known as the Singles' Day Festival. Since 2009, the bonanza has lured crowds to buy bigger and faster year after year. This year, the pandemic did little to keep Chinese shoppers from turning out in droves. According to internet giant Alibaba's site, Tmall, shoppers broke records, placing more than 500,000 orders every second at the peak. To put the numbers in context, last year, American consumers spent roughly a combined $16 billion during Black Friday and Cyber Monday. But how much did the Chinese consumers spend during this year's Double 11? $74 billion. That is 498 billion yuan. It increased by a staggering 85% from last year.
But not everything is well with China's richest man, Jack Ma. His Ant Group, the internet finance giant, was ready for its dual listing in Shanghai and Hong Kong last Tuesday, but less than 48 hours before its debut, Chinese financial regulators threw a monkey wrench in what would have been the world's largest IPO of the Ant Group. That's after a meeting with its billionaire founder and the company's other senior executives, bringing uncertainty to markets and investors.
For the excitement of Double 11 in Tianjin, we are joined by Duncan Clark, chairman of BDA China and author of the book Alibaba, the House That Jack Ma Built. And in Beijing, Liu Baocheng, Dean of the Center for International Business Ethics from University of International Business and Economics. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. First question, have you gentlemen shopped on the Singles' Day?
Well, the thing I haven't used for the last 2 weeks is shoes. I've been in slippers, so I've been buying a nice pair of shoes that I can throw in the washing machine, the Old Birds brand, which I like very much. So, yeah, I have bought some shoes.
Sounds great. Well, I want to take a look at those shoes in the future. Professor Liu, what about for you?
No, unfortunately, I was teaching students how to run their e-commerce in my marketing class. So therefore, you teach them how to do that, and then you miss the chance of doing it by itself.
I've always been hearing excuses for shopping more, but this is one of the very few occasions that I hear excuses for not shopping at all. But anyway, great to hear both of your answers. Let me ask both of you, how do you see this year's Singles' Day? How is it compared to previous years? What do you think it will be its special significance? Professor Liu, briefly.
I used to think that people are now used to online shopping, and also online shopping has spread into third and even fourth tier cities. So it is more of a habitual, and there's not much excitement. But now the figure turned out to be rather a happy surprise to me. The Taobao has surged by 85% and JD.com by 32%. It seems that there has been quite a pent-up demand for Double 11, and people's enthusiasm are still on the high side. So this is a happy surprise to me.
A happy surprise. What about for you, Mr. Clark?
This story has been the West very much, and other countries shifting very rapidly to online because of the pandemic. China had already made big strides and is, I think, the most e-commerce penetrated market in the world. About 25% of all retail is online. And yet, using new technology, live streaming, extending this holiday. Also, let's not forget these numbers reflect 11 days instead of 24 hours. Keeping this investment going to keep the excitement going. New products, new techniques, gamification. So it's a constant treadmill, actually, for Alibaba, but they, continue to deliver on the results.
Not only Alibaba, but also other e-commerce sites as well. If we take a look at some of the recent surveys suggesting that 86% of Chinese consumers are willing to spend the same as, or even more than what they did during last year's Singles' Day. Of course, this survey was done before the Singles' Day happened for this year. But it's very impressive, and it seems that they achieved what they have promised in a way. Professor Liu.
Yes, right now we do see far more competition than before, and particularly those smaller platforms and individual vendors are doing live streaming that can really activate the entire landscape for e-commerce. And in the meantime, we do see that the promotional skills over the e-commerce is getting more and more sophisticated, and so but on the other side, of the equation, the consumers are also getting more and more sophisticated. They know how to meander into the right type of commodity they want to buy, and there's far more variety. One thing I would really like to mention that from those statistics, we do see that foreign goods are also experiencing very good sales. This is probably because the lockdown, that there are Chinese people are unable to travel overseas, so therefore they also receive quite a favorite from the international online shops.
Absolutely. It seems that a lot of international boutiques and brands and online shops are double down on the Chinese market during the Singles' Day. So this is more not only a China story, but rather an international story, isn't it, Mr. Clark?
Absolutely right. We saw offline, we saw a lot of luxury goods retailers shifting inventory from Europe and elsewhere, where typically they would be serving Chinese and other tourists, to shops in the mainland. And we see the same effect now online, of course. 11/11 typically affects the retail calendar, that people kind of offset or put off, rather, their purchases in the run-up to it. This year we have a double effect. Obviously, the beginning of the year was hit by the pandemic in China, and now we have what's called revenge spending. Living well is the best revenge, they say. And people obviously couldn't buy things earlier on, or they were worried about the economy. We saw very strong GDP growth in Q3. China will be the only G20 economy growing this year, and e-commerce is something like 17% growth in the third quarter, reflecting this sort of pent-up demand.
And the other thing is the online shops and also e-commerce sites are trying to create some kinds of huge festive atmosphere. And this year particularly, you see not only on Singles' Day, by the way, Professor Liu, you don't have much excuse not to shop, because there are many more days this year, and not only Singles' Day, but 3 days at the very beginning of November. Yes, indeed. So it's really a festival now. How is this festival coming into being? Will it continue? In what way? I think that's a very interesting question, particularly given this year's very special atmosphere, Mr. Clark.
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the big emphasis is on helping SMEs, including in the West. So in the case of Alibaba, I think the number one origin was the United States, about $5 billion worth of goods or so. Obviously, that's Nike and Apple, but a lot of SMEs as well, small, medium-sized enterprises. The idea is that we have to show that the market is open, using technology and researching properly to anyone. Now, getting the right balance, of course, between those merchants and these big platforms is important, and obviously the government is starting to look at that in China as well. But I think the reality is people do want to consume here. That's a rarity in the world right now, and so it's very important that people do have market access here.
But Professor Liu, one would assume that the consumers might not have necessarily that huge both budget and appetite because the pandemic is still with us and we do not know yet the future of the global economy. But Chinese consumers are just amazing, it seems. Well, not you, I mean, not about you, but the rest.
Well, actually, I'm still complaining to my wife, who really spent a lot more money when I returned home last night from class. So Yes, fundamentally, it is really the savings rate Chinese households are holding. And also, that's also why we didn't really have quite a panic socially when households are still having more of the savings if you compare that with the counterparts in the United States and other parts of the world. So that's the confidence building. And the other is that Chinese consumers are getting more and more savvy, and they know which is really the critical point for shopping to their best benefit. And also that the promotion side from those the online vendors, they learn all the sophisticated skills, and even I noticed that the poverty-stricken countries are participating in a very nice and professional way. So it seems that this is really the way of life for commerce, and also this is really becoming the lifestyle for the consumers.
And also we have seen a new profession in China, the online shopping guides in a way, or they say the they say the shopping host. This is a new profession in China, trying to encourage more desire from the consumers to buy, and buy. Mr. Clark.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a bit like the old days of online TV shopping, or TV shopping, but it's much more direct when, you feel a more personal connection. And as we heard, I mean, particularly in rural areas, I think we have like 100,000 of these sort of rural streamers, if you will, including farmers and so on. Some of them become famous, and, as long as you have a good internet connection and a decent smartphone, which is pretty much everybody, you can access this. Of course, it's very competitive, and people have to do different things to stay popular. But some have had breakouts. And, it's interesting, that idea of closing the gap between the rural and the urban areas using technology, and including selling, products from rural areas, of course, which helps with the overall goals here.
Another thing I want to ask both of you gentlemen is where are things going? You look at Alibaba, of course, that was the one that started the Singles Day. Jack Ma himself put a signature over there, but the others follow. We also see the increasing improvement of the competitors against Alibaba in China, and certainly when the international brands and sites come over, or being also popular here, it's going to be bigger competition. So, Mr. Clark, how do you see the competition or the competitive edge of Alibaba in the future? After all, you were the author who wrote the book, The House That Jack Ma Built. How is that house right now?
The house is big and growing. There are other houses, that's true. Jingdong, JD, of course, Pinduoduo, famously growing from those lower tier cities and becoming very popular. And actually, there are elements of Alibaba which compete now directly with Pinduoduo. They've launched new services, kind of targeting perhaps more price-sensitive consumers. So, actually, in the context of this new scrutiny from the government on the size of these big tech companies, competition might be a very useful thing right now for these platforms, because they have to prove that they're not monopolies or oligopolies. So actually, we may see a shift to sort of welcoming more competition for the coming months.
Very interesting. Professor Liu, what's your observation?
Yeah, competition is always good for the consumers. Actually, many governments in all market economies would try to knock down those monopoly or oligopoly. So we do see this is really a benign type of movement that more and more platforms, and even the smaller platforms are really being formed to erode into the market share of Ali and JD.com. So actually, I've been proposing to the government that we really need to tighten the anti-monopoly type of review over those big giants, and not only those e-commerce, but also the financial platform sector. And the fact that the Ant was under tighter review and the suspension of the IPO is introducing some of the consideration from the Chinese regulators that we do need a healthier competition, and we do need a level playing field for more of the participants into the market for efficiency and also fairness.
On the other hand, the sales number this year for Alibaba certainly is a breath of relief for the company itself. with the earlier scrutiny from regulators about its way of operating, especially anti-financial. Mr. Clark.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yesterday was a terrible day for Alibaba's share price, down 10%. So there was sort of a discount. It was an 11/11 day on their share price as well, which is not good. Typically, we won't see the results in their financial results from 11/11 until later in the year or early next year. We have to keep an eye on margins, make sure that margins are keeping up with sales. But generally, it's proving again their dominance in this market. But as we saw, the European Commission in Brussels is now launching an investigation into Amazon. Governments around the world are mindful of the power of technology companies. That power has become even greater this year as a result of the pandemic. And so it's up to these companies to demonstrate they're offering fair access, they're not using data in the wrong way. So, scrutiny everywhere is increasing, but so is their scale. So it's an interesting balancing act.
Where is going to be the energy of the economy? Now, both of you know very well, gentlemen, that we will not be able to have a relief unless we have very effective vaccines that can be vaccinated to mass population, not just 10 or 20%, which can be done possibly with hope by the year 2021, the end of it. But with this reality in mind, what's going to be this theme moving the global economy, global trade, the desire to shop by the consumers forward? Professor Liu.
This is really a trendsetter for global business, but however the promotion, however the gimmicks used, it is really the fundamental part is that people must have enough income. You need to have a stable job. You need also to see a positive prospect for your future earning capacity. So therefore, each of the government is there to create jobs and also on a solid economy instead of playing the money games and with all the virtual economies. So this is really something that Chinese government has paid great attention to during the most recent important meeting. With regard to develop the Chinese real economy together with solid job opportunities.
Mr. Clark.
What our friend Kevin Rudd says, the new abnormal. I mean, we're not going back exactly to the way we lived our lives before. We will resume a lot more normalcy, I think, by the second, third quarter of next year. But, because of the impact of the pandemic, people are going to think again, like small restaurants or retailers, how much more can they embrace digital? Because it's too risky. I mean, there could be another pandemic. We never know. And so, I think it's going to change the way merchants behave and consumers. But as you said, the number one, as the professor says, the number one thing is to get people back to work if they've lost their job and build up savings. Curiously, of course, quite a few people have, if they're lucky enough to have income through government support or working from home, they're actually spending less in a number of categories. So we do see opportunity to spend. Particularly look at travel. When the vaccine came out, share prices of airlines jumped like 40% because there's an anticipation that people will want to travel again when they can. So it's just a timing game at this point.
China has been talking about double circulation, or now also known as two development dynamic, meaning a internal circulation, quote unquote, and a external circulation. Internal is more about the domestic consumption, domestic production, domestic innovation, and the so-called external is about linking China and with the rest of the world. Of course, that has always been the practice over the past decades since China's reform and opening up. But this time, the internal cycle seems to play a bigger role given the lockdowns of countries around the world. So, Mr. Clark, how do you see that from both afar, where you were in France earlier, and now coming back, see what's happening also during the Singles Day?
Well, I do feel these worlds are quite apart, having walked through plastic tunnels and hazmat suits to get to my room and leaving this tomorrow after 14 days. You do feel that there is a very much a physical separation, a hermetically sealed kind of market in China right now. But as you say, there has been emphasis, as the professor was saying, to stimulate consumption, reduce what we call, precautionary savings, where people tend to save too much, investments in healthcare and infrastructure, things to make people feel that they can actually spend more, and the consumption then drives the economy. But this year, because of the pandemic, the trade tensions, and other things, we do see this separation has crystallized. So it is important for China to rely more on demand at home, because that is the strong place to be right now. But at the same time, it still needs to develop its export markets and address, those international geopolitical issues which are so pressing for the world right now.
Mind-boggling, but there are other countries who are having even more mind-boggling questions facing them, unfortunately. But Professor Liu, your thoughts on that? Double circulation, where is it heading?
I think we, over the past 5 years, we have implemented supply side reform, and now it is really on the demand side. It is really how consumers think about it, what is really the consumer preference, etc. So that's something we need to address. And now, given the uncertainty looming large, not only because the pandemic, but also because the lockdown going on, the trade tension, etc. So it is also considered to be a contingency plan that China has to be more self-reliant by boosting consumption and also having a higher level of self-reliance on their innovation. So it does not mean that China is going to, lock down itself, but rather to collaborate with the world in a choicy way.
The issue about WTO reform, which is much bigger than just single-day shopping, given that there will be geopolitics, given that there will be pandemic still with us, what systematic and institutional platforms can we rely on, gentlemen, when we think about the trade going to another higher stage of development? Can we still imagine that, or for now we have to put that aside and just focus on today? Mr. Clark.
Well, I think when we think about trade, we often think about containers, and I mean Tianjin, the container port, and but actually trade increasingly also is digital as well. And we think about even I'm just thinking of small companies I met in France that have developed digital gaming platforms that are very big in China, for example. Trade increasingly is digital as well. And so that's an easier game to play, actually, than getting into the traditional trade and the tariffs and tensions there. So this shift that we've seen online for consumption, I think we're going to see more generally, is a more reliable way of conducting business. So I think more digitalization is coming.
Digitalization is coming, and that could be a solution to the deadlock, you think, Mr. Clark, or even more?
Well, there are no, the borders are very different, more porous in the digital world, right? I mean, just think about the gaming community, and we don't often think about this, but how linked, young people are in China, Japan, in Europe, and the States, in ways that, it's hard for us to imagine. These are communities that kind of spread across boundaries. So, but what they spend on gaming or content is huge. I mean, we've seen this in the other direction with, TikTok in China becoming a global phenomenon. It's important because these platforms generate lots of advertising revenue. They're also generating e-commerce. So, I mean, obviously I'm more focused on the digital economy, but I think the more that we can, break down those borders using the digital world, that will help. Because the traditional tariff, we are in a protectionist era at the moment, or a reducing reliance on China and other key suppliers as a result of the pandemic. That's inevitable.
Professor Liu?
Yeah, well, in addition to all the e-commerce, all the service sectors like gaming, etc., we do need a rule-based international trade platform. And now that WTO is not functioning itself to the expectation of the global community, and now with the shift of the U.S. administration, we anticipate that the WTO can be reformed or repaired in some positive way. And now I think also the trade dispute settlement is also very important because of the looming protectionism, populism going on. So where can be the arbitration body for trade disputes or conciliation centers? That's something that China is also very concerned, and we're really pushing for a more integrated world, integrated region, and also a fair leveling playing field for businesses.
Well, that's of course a whole lot of discussions we can do other time about the international trading system. But for now, I want to thank both of you, and I want to wrap it up with a light note. It's not just a Singles Day, Double 11 now. In order to increase the consumer's appetite to shop, there's even a Double 12 on December the 12th. So I guess Professor Liu and Mr. Clark, we have to prepare for that, another discussion. But for now, I want to thank both of you. Duncan Clark, welcome back to China, and Liu Baozhang, really appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen. Be well.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Coming up on our program, famous for telling customers because you are worth it and beauty for all, French personal care company L'Oreal made its presence worth it at the recent China Import Expo. How beauty products survive lockdowns and growth prospects from the L'Oreal chairman after this break. Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. 2020 upended our lives. A very tough year for everyone. For businesses, it's not only a huge stress test, but also a reckoning of their real strength. Earlier on the sidelines of this year's China International Import Expo, possibly the world's largest import expo, I talked to executives from a number of multinational companies. What I noticed is that at a time of crisis, they turn to what truly matters, the consumers. So what do customers and consumers of the cosmetic brand L'Oreal want during the pandemic when everyone either stays at home or has a mask on? I asked L'Oreal's chairman, Jean-Paul Agung, about that question. Mr. Agung, what a pleasure to see you once again.
It's a pleasure for me. Nice to see you again.
What do you think of this year? I mean, this is a very challenging year for all businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the first, of course, this epidemic is really terrible, and the first terrible consequence is more for the health and the safety of people around the world. There are also some economic consequences in terms of business, in terms of sales, but it's very contrasted around the world. Some parts of the world are doing great, like China. China is the example, maybe the only example of a country where we are doing really, really well. But in the rest of the world, we are also getting better now.
So what do you think? What are the things people aspire to have? I mean, when they are in the middle of the quarantine, when they're having the lockdown, when they are, you know, just coming out of the difficulties, what are the products that they really prefer at this time?
Yeah, it depends if it's during the epidemic or after the epidemic. You know, during the epidemic, of course, women and people are consuming less makeup, of course, because when you are quarantined, when you can't go out, when you wear a mask, you don't wear that much makeup, but you use more skincare to take care of yourself, hair care also to feel good. But after the epidemic, I think that we're going to see a bounce back of consumption of products that are important for the quality of life and the quality of the relationship together. So personally, I'm very confident that when the COVID will be gone forever, I think that we're going to see a bounce back of the consumption of makeup and hair color and even fragrances. I'm optimistic for the future.
And it's nothing wrong to seal the face mask with the lipsticks. It will be reflected on. Having said that, though, what about business-wise? What has been your contingency plan over the past 11 months?
You know you have seen the number that we had. We had
Yes.
the first quarter where we were slightly below. We were slightly negative, and that was in the first quarter because of what happened first in China and started to happen in Western Europe. But then the second quarter was more down because of the epidemic spread in Western Europe, in North America, in Latin America, in India. But you have seen also recently that on the third quarter, we were able to get back to positive territory. So we are back to growth, thanks to China, of course, but thanks also to other parts of the world that are really getting better. And we are confident for the end of the year. We think that we don't know yet exactly because the epidemic is really unpredictable, but we hope that we will be able to stay in positive territory.
So how much is China market contributing to the overall economic recovery, shall I say, on your numbers? And what about the rest of the world? Where are the other active areas?
China is the most important part of the positive contribution, as you said, because China is the only major country in the world that was positive, and it has been very positive, as you know, because at the end of September, in total, we were up plus 20% of our sales in China, which is, by the way, much more than the market itself, because the market in China was positive, was slightly positive, and the plus 20% is much more than the market itself. So, and China, so it's the major contribution, and we are really happy that China was able to recover so fast. And the other major countries of the world are still in negative territory. But we hope that until the end of the year or the beginning of next year, they will also be back in positive territory.
Tell me, what does that mean for your company when China says we want a higher quality opening up? Would that be good news for an international company like yours? What does it really mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very good news. To be honest, it's not surprising news because, you know, I know China very well. I've come to China at least 50 or 60 times. I have created with the team, the Chinese team, the subsidiary in China. So I follow China very well. And I know that for the past 20 years, China has always been contributing to opening up of the world and developing multilateral relation. But it's true that this movement is accelerating now, and I think it's extremely positive, not only for L'Oréal but for the world itself, because the world needs to be an open place where there are exchanges, trade between countries, between people. And by the way, this is also why we are so committed to CIE, because CIE is the most symbolic event in order to maximize this global trade and exchange.
So what are you going to do when China say we're going to have two circulations? One is so-called internal circulation, the other is external, but meaning China linking with the rest of the world. It's also being known as two development dynamics. So how do you think you can take advantage of this? First of all, China's domestic circulation or market, then being a bridge between China and the rest of the world, the so-called international circulation.
Yeah, no, I think this dual circulation is a great idea. First, for the economy of China, because the development of China, I think it has to be based on these two engines. One which is export and import, and the other one which is internal consumption, which has to be increased more and more. And you know, and for us, it's already what we do. You know, for example, L'Oréal is doing the dual circulation. We are manufacturing in China and exporting to the rest of Asia. We are importing some brands in China from France, for example. And at the same time, we are really developing consumption in China from products that we import or from products that we manufacture. So, in fact, this dual circulation is already something that we have been doing for many years. So for us, it doesn't change a lot. And again, I think it's a great strategy for China.
How do you, as a business leader, see some of the major changes in the world? For example, technology, for example, geopolitics, all these uncertainties, what does that mean to you when you look at your plan, when you look at your implementations?
Yeah, you know, we have permanently to adapt. You know, you cannot control the evolution of the world. So you have to be very agile. I think the consequence for us is that more than ever, we have to be very agile, really able to adapt to different situations, to different changes, and that's what we do. And it's true that in our industry, it is not too complicated because, you know, we serve in every country consumers. So we don't do politics. We serve consumers, and so we serve American consumers, we serve Chinese consumers, we serve Brazilian consumers, and so we adapt to the evolution of the situation. For us, what is important is that consumers are still looking for a better life, a better quality of life, and we contribute, we think, to this quality of life and this happiness. So the bottom line is that we try to adapt and evolve as the world is changing all the time.
As chairman and CEO, you need to get hold of the overall situation. You also want to know what is happening really on the ground. But I know, you know, where you are has to be quarantined, or there were lockdowns from time to time. So how would you do that?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because on one side we could not travel, but because we could not travel, we had also more opportunities to communicate with more people. I'll give you an example. Until now, we were doing one country manager meeting per year in Paris, where we invited all the country managers, you know, 100 people from all over the world, once per year in Paris, in person. Because we couldn't do it this year, we organized it virtually. But instead of doing one, we did 5 or 6. So in fact, you know, there is always a good side to every situation. So in fact, I had more contacts with the people of all over the world this year that I had in the past because of this virtual organization.
Right. Well, since we're talking about technology, let me ask you technology from another perspective. I mean, e-commerce, that has been extremely important for your industry, particularly here in China. As we speak, the Singles Day, which is almost a day for shopping in China, on November the 11th, or 1111 would happen. So that is a huge occasion. So how are you competing at this occasion, and how to catch up with the latest trends, even minor trends in e-commerce, in order to appeal to markets of all different generations and levels?
No, we do it very well. You know, in fact, we have been one of the first companies to embrace e-commerce from the very beginning, especially in China. I remember that our team in China was the first company to invite Alibaba 10 years ago, when it was still very at the beginning. Daniel was invited at the executive committee of L'Oréal in 2011. So it was the first company that he visited. And really, so we have been embracing e-commerce from the very beginning. And I think that we are probably one of the best companies in terms of e-commerce. And I have to say that the team in China is doing an extremely great job in terms of e-commerce, but also in these special events like 11/11 or June 16 or etc.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad you remember all these numbers.
Yeah, of course, there are more and more every year. but they do such a good job that our market share during this event is even much stronger than our market share along the year, which means that even in these special circumstances, our brands are stronger than ever, and consumers are really looking for our products. So for us, it's a great evolution.
Your business, especially your company, has been talking about beauty for all for a long time. And that's a beautiful sentence, shall I say. But on the other hand, over the past few years, we've experienced, many say, ugliness of the world. we've seen the worst side of human nature, and we've seen the weakest point of our human society, for example, in facing up to the disease. So how do you see this reality and the aspiration?
You know, I think that I'm not sure that the present period is worse than previous periods. You know, the humanity has lived also through very difficult periods of time. You know, in the 20th century, in the 19th century, in Europe, in Asia, life has never been easy. So I don't think it's more difficult today than it used to be. It's just different. And I think that's also why I'm so happy and proud to do the job that I do, because I think that beauty products are bringing, you know, happiness, quality of life to billions of consumers all over the world. You know, a famous writer, Dostoevsky, said that beauty will save the world. So I don't know if it will save the world, but it contributes every day to saving a little bit your quality of life, your happiness, and that's why we are proud to do this job.
At least beauty from within would really save the world. And
Absolutely.
Of course, the beauty.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you so much, as always, Mr. Agung. What a pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of the team. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.